A struggling rancher found two enormous Apache women concealed in his livestock shelter. When sunrise came, 60 war-painted warriors observed from the forest edge. The stillness felt unnatural. During his 15 years managing this property, Silas Ward had never experienced his livestock falling completely silent simultaneously. His aged rooster had even ceased its morning calls. An unwelcome presence occupied his barn. Upon forcing open the massive timber doors, anticipating perhaps an injured wolf or stray cattle, he discovered two females crouched in the shadowy corner. These weren't ordinary women he'd encountered before. Both towered well above 6 feet, displaying elaborate battle paint across their faces in striking crimson and ebony designs identifying them as Apache. Crimson stains marked their ripped garments, while their feet bore improvised cloth wrappings. Whatever circumstances had compelled them to seek refuge in his shelter must have been dire enough to warrant traveling through hostile lands during darkness. "We beg you," the elder woman spoke in heavily accented English, lifted her palms to demonstrate peaceful intentions. "We require sanctuary only until darkness falls. Afterward, we depart." Before Silas could reply, her younger companion seized his forearm. "Pay attention," she urged quietly. He then perceived it. The noise that filled his chest with foreboding. Movement in the undergrowth, leather groaning, gentle hoarse snorts being suppressed. Armed individuals were encircling his land, moving cautiously to remain undetected. Approaching the barn opening, he glimpsed them through the weathered timber gaps. Watching eyes behind trees and boulders. Not merely 10 or 20, 60 painted warriors, perhaps more, all concentrating on his barn, all waiting. "They pursued us," the elder woman stated quietly. "We believed we had evaded them in the ravine." "But who are they?" Silas inquired, though he already suspected. "Warriors dispatched by Chief Aando," she answered. "We are his captives. We fled 3 days past. However, he won't release us easily." The younger woman's hand shifted to a hide bundle at her side. "We transport something he desires returned. Something that might prevent conflict or initiate one." Through the barn's timber, Silas detected horses approaching, soft Apache commands, the sound of weapons being prepared. "They've located us," the older woman declared, "and now they realize you've witnessed us. We apologize, Silas Ward. We never intended to bring this to your doorstep." She knew his identity. Somehow these fleeing Apache women recognized who he was. "How do you," he started, but the younger woman interrupted him. "They're advancing," she whispered, gesturing toward the barn entrance. "Whatever unfolds next, remember this. We sought you because you're the sole settler in this valley who's ever demonstrated kindness to Apache people. That kindness might be the only thing preserving any of our lives." Silas Ward's hands shook as he clutched his firearm, though not from fear of the women in his barn. The trembling originated from deeper awareness. He was about to become the focal point of something far greater than his modest, struggling ranch could manage. The older woman moved forward, and in the morning illumination filtering through the barn slats, he could observe her more distinctly. She appeared to be in her 30s, possessing intelligent dark eyes and silver strands woven into her black plates. The war paint adorning her face wasn't random. It narrated a story with symbols he couldn't decipher, yet somehow comprehended men authority. "I am Ayana," she declared, her English flawless but accented. "This is my sister, Kiona. We are Chief Nailish daughters of the White Mountain people." Her manner of speaking suggested he should recognize that name. He didn't. However, he grasped enough about Apache politics to understand that chiefs' daughters didn't end up bleeding in strangers' barns without serious reason. Kiona, the younger sister, never diverted her gaze from the barn entrance. She was constructed like a fighter. Wide shoulders, muscular arms, hand scars that spoke of weapons expertise. Her war paint differed, more hostile, with sharp lines that made her appear battle-ready. "Chief Aando desires to wed me," Ayana continued, "to merge our tribes through force, not choice. When I declined, he captured our youngest sister as guarantee. He stated he'd return her only if I became his spouse within 7 days." Silas lowered his rifle somewhat. "So you escaped." "We fled," Kiona corrected sharply, "with evidence that proves Ando's true intentions." She touched the leather bundle at her waist. Documents, correspondence, proof that he's not planning unity. He's planning to utilize our combined tribes to expel all settlers from this territory, beginning with isolated homesteads like yours. The significance of her words settled over Silas like a frigid covering. His closest neighbor lived 8 miles distant. If Apache war parties chose to clear the valley, his ranch would be among the initial targets. "Why approach me?" he asked. "I'm nobody significant, merely a man attempting to keep his cattle alive." Ayana's expression softened slightly. "Because we observed you, Silas Ward. Last winter, when the Mescalero children were starving, you left provisions at the old trading post. You didn't publicize it. You didn't inform anyone. You simply did what was proper." A whistle sounded from the tree line. Low, sharp, unmistakably a signal. All three froze. "They're advancing," Kiona whispered, her hand moving to a blade at her belt. Aando's scouts discovered our trail. Through the barn door, Silas could observe figures emerging from their concealment. 60 warriors, perhaps more, painted for battle and bearing weapons. They weren't hiding anymore. They were preparing to assault. Silas Ward had precisely 30 seconds to make a choice that would determine whether he lived to witness another sunset. Through the gaps in his barn walls, he watched as the Apache warriors distributed themselves in a perfect circle around his property. These weren't raiders or young hotheads. They moved with the precision of experienced fighters who had done this numerous times before. "There's a root cellar beneath the feed storage," Silas whispered urgently. "Stone walls, hidden entrance. You could—" "No." Ayana's voice was resolute. "We won't hide while you face them alone." "You don't comprehend," Silas hissed. "I'm not planning to confront them. I'm planning to surrender you." Both sisters stared at him. For a moment, the only sound was creaking saddle leather as riders positioned themselves around the ranch. Then Ayana smiled, not with bitterness, but with something that resembled approval. "Excellent," she said. "That's precisely what we hoped you'd say." Before Silas could process her words, Kiona was already moving. She grabbed a rope coil from the barn wall and began binding her sister's wrist behind her back. "Aando's men need to believe you captured us," she explained quickly, "that you're turning us over as a loyal settler." "What?" Silas felt like the ground was shifting beneath his feet. "I don't understand." "The documents we carry," Ayana said as her sister finished in knots. "They're not just evidence of Aando's war plans. They're also proof that he's been accepting weapons and gold from Mexican traders in exchange for promised raids on American settlements. The territorial governor would pay handsomely for this information." A voice boomed across the ranch yard, speaking in Apache. Silas didn't understand the words, but the tone was clear. "Surrender the women or face the consequences. You have maybe 2 minutes before they lose patience," Kiona said, now tying her own hands with practiced efficiency. "When you hand us over, make sure you mention that we're carrying valuable intelligence. Aando will want to examine what we have before he deals with us." "This is insane," Silas muttered. "What's to stop him from just killing all 3 of us?" "Because," Ayana said, settling into the role of captive with disturbing ease, "Aando is arrogant. He'll want to gloat to prove his superiority before he finishes this. That arrogance is the only advantage we have." Another shout from outside, closer this time, boots on wooden steps. They were coming to the barn door. "Remember," Kiona whispered, "act terrified. Act like you're betraying us to save your own skin. It's probably not far from the truth." Suddenly, the barn door exploded inward, and 6 painted warriors flooded inside, weapons drawn. Behind them, a man who could only be Chief Aando stepped into the space. He was tall, powerfully built, with the bearing of someone accustomed to absolute authority. His eyes found the sisters immediately, then shifted to Silas with cold calculation. "So," Aando said in perfect English, "the white man has done our work for us." Silas Ward forced his voice to shake as he spoke, which wasn't difficult since terror was running through his veins like ice water. "Chief Aando, sir, I found these women in my barn this morning. They said you were looking for them." Aando's dark eyes studied Silas with the intensity of a hawk examining prey. The chief was younger than Silas had expected, maybe 40, with ritual scars on his chest and arms that marked him as a veteran warrior. The war paint on his face was elaborate, black and red patterns that spoke of leadership and battle honors. They spoke truthfully, Aando said, stepping closer to examine the bound sisters. These women carry something that belongs to my people. What do you know of their business here? Nothing, sir. I just want to keep living peacefully on my land. Silas glanced nervously at the warriors flanking their chief. Each man was armed with both traditional weapons and modern rifles, a combination that made them devastatingly effective. Kiona lifted her head defiantly. You can tie our hands, Aando, but you cannot tie our spirits. Our father will come for us. Your father is 3 days' ride away, and he doesn't know where you are, Aando replied coldly. By the time he discovers your location, you will already be my wife, and this territorial dispute will be settled permanently. Ayana met her captor's gaze without flinching. You mean your war against the settlers will begin permanently? We know about your meetings with the Mexican gun runners. We know about the weapons cache you built up over the past 6 months. Aando's expression shifted from confidence to sharp interest. What do you know? Enough, Ayana said. Check the bundle at my waist. You'll find very interesting reading material. One of the warriors stepped forward and untied the leather pouch from Kiona's belt. Inside were several folded papers and what looked like a small metal object. The warrior handed everything to his chief. Aando unfolded the papers, and his face went stone still as he read. Whatever was written, there clearly wasn't what he'd expected to find. His jaw tightened, and when he looked up at the sisters, there was something new in his eyes. Respect mixed with fury. Where did you get these? He demanded. Does it matter? Kiona asked. What matters is that we have them. And if anything happens to us, copies of those documents are already on their way to the territorial governor. Silas watched this exchange with growing confusion. The sisters were supposed to be captives, but they were acting like they held all the cards. More importantly, Aando was reacting like they actually did. You're bluffing, Aando said, but his voice lacked conviction. Ayana smiled. The metal object in that bundle is a compass. Check the inscription on the back. Aando turned the compass over and read something that made his face go pale beneath the war paint. This belonged to Colonel Martinez. It did, Kiona confirmed, right up until yesterday when we took it from his dead body. The temperature in the barn seemed to drop 10 degrees. Every warrior present understood the implications. If the Mexican colonel was dead, then the entire gun-running operation was compromised. And if the sisters had killed him, they were far more dangerous than anyone had realized. Aando's warriors exchanged uneasy glances as their chief stared at the compass in his palm. The silence stretched until Silas could hear his own heartbeat hammering in his ears. Whatever hold the sisters thought they had over this situation was about to be tested. Colonel Martinez was worth more to me alive than dead. Aando said finally, his voice dangerously quiet. His death complicates everything. His death solves everything, Ayana corrected. The territorial governor has been looking for evidence of Mexican interference in Apache affairs. Now he has it, along with proof that you've been planning coordinated attacks on American settlements. Aando laughed, but there was no humor in it. You think your white government will protect you? You think they care about Apache women? No, Kiona said, but they care about preventing a war that would cost them thousands of soldiers and millions of dollars. They'll negotiate to avoid that cost. Silas watched this verbal chess match with growing dread. These weren't desperate refugees hiding in his barn. These were political operatives playing a game he didn't understand, and somehow he'd become a piece on their board. There's something you haven't considered, Aando said, stepping closer to the sisters. What if I simply kill all 3 of you here and now? Your documents mean nothing if no one delivers them. Because, Ayana said calmly, you're not the only one we've been watching. Your lieutenant, Chayton, has been having secret meetings with our father. He's been telling Chief Nailish about your real plans, the ones where his tribe becomes subordinate to yours after the marriage alliance. Every eye in the barn turned to look at a warrior standing near the door. Chayton was younger than the others, maybe 25, with the lean build of a scout rather than a frontline fighter. His face had gone ashen beneath his war paint. "That's a lie," Chayton said, but his voice cracked slightly. "The night before we escaped," Kiona continued, "Chayton sent a message to our father. We intercepted it. Would you like to know what it said?" Aando's hand moved slowly to his tomahawk. "Enlighten me." It said that once you control of both tribes, you plan to eliminate Chief Nailish and his sons. That the marriage to Ayana was just the first step in absorbing our people entirely into your command structure. Aando's eyes never left Chayton's face. "Is this true, Lieutenant?" "I would never." The message also included specific details about your weapons cache. Ayana added, "Details that only someone in your inner circle would know. Someone who's been planning his own survival when this alliance inevitably collapses." Silas realized he was witnessing something far more dangerous than a territorial dispute. This was a powder keg of tribal politics, Mexican gun runners, territorial governments, and personal betrayals. And it was all happening in his barn. "Kill them all," Aando ordered suddenly. "We'll settle this the traditional way." But as his warriors raised their weapons, Chayton stepped forward. "Wait," he said. "Before you do something we can't undo, you should know there's one more thing the sisters haven't told you." "What?" Aando demanded. Chayton looked directly at Silas. They didn't escape to his ranch by accident. Silas Ward isn't just some random settler. All eyes turned to Silas, who felt like the ground was about to open beneath his feet. He's the territorial governor's nephew. The barn fell silent, except for the sound of Silas Ward's world crashing down around him. Every pair of eyes was fixed on his face, waiting for confirmation or denial of Chayton's explosive revelation. "That's impossible," Silas said, his voice barely above a whisper. "My uncle died when I was 12. Cholera outbreak in Kansas." Chayton shook his head. "Robert Ward didn't die. He changed his name to Robert Washington when he took the territorial appointment. I've been tracking territorial correspondence for months. That's how I learned about your family connection." Ayana was watching Silas with new intensity. "You really didn't know, did you?" "Know what?" Silas felt like he was drowning in confusion. "My Uncle Bob was a farmer. He grew corn and raised pigs. He couldn't possibly be the territorial governor of New Mexico. Governor Robert Washington." Aando finished. "The man whose signature appears on every Apache reservation treaty. The man who decides whether tribes live in peace or face military action." Chayton pulled a folded letter from his shirt. "This is correspondence between Governor Washington and your father, dated 6 months ago. Your father writes about your monthly reports on local conditions. The governor writes back asking for more detailed information about Apache movements and settler relations." Silas stared at the letter. The handwriting was definitely his father's, but the content was unfamiliar. "I write those reports, but they're just observations about weather, crops, occasional Apache trading parties." "Those reports have been forwarded directly to the governor's office," Chayton explained. "You've been providing territorial intelligence without knowing it. Every report you've written has gone directly to the governor's desk. You've been a territorial intelligence agent without knowing it," Chayton continued. "Reports that describe Apache movements, tribal politics, and potential threats to settlers." Aando was studying Silas with new calculation. "Which means killing you will bring the full weight of the territorial military down on my people. But keeping you alive gives us a hostage worth more than both sisters combined," Ayana finished. "If you control the governor's nephew, you control the governor's response to any crisis. Unless," Kiona added, "the governor refuses to negotiate for a nephew he's never acknowledged publicly." The political chess game was becoming clearer, and Silas realized he was no longer just a bystander. He was the most valuable piece on the board, whether he wanted to be or not. "There's something else," Chayton said, glancing nervously at his chief. "The documents the sisters carry include correspondence between Governor Washington and Colonel Martinez. The territorial government wasn't just aware of the Mexican gun running. They were secretly encouraging it." Aando's face darkened. "What?" "They wanted you to have modern weapons," Ayana explained, "because a well-armed Apache force attacking American settlements would justify a massive military response. The kind of response that would eliminate the Apache problem permanently." The barn seemed to shrink as the full scope of the conspiracy became clear. Everyone present, Apache and settler alike, had been manipulated by forces larger than themselves. And now they all had to decide what to do about it. Aando's warriors shifted restlessly as the weight of betrayal settled over everyone in the barn. The chief himself stood motionless, his painted face a mask of controlled fury. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the cold precision of a man recalculating everything he believed. "So my people were meant to be slaughtered," he said. "The weapons, the encouragement to raid settlements, the promises of territorial concessions, all of it designed to justify our extermination." "The correspondence is very clear," Ayana confirmed. Governor Washington wrote to Colonel Martinez that a significant Apache uprising would provide the necessary political support for a final military solution. Silas felt sick. His own intelligence reports, written in innocence about tribal movements and settler concerns, had been feeding into this conspiracy. "How long has this been planned?" 2 years, Kiona answered. "Since the silver discoveries in the Magdalena Mountains. The territorial government needs those mining rights, but they can't legally take them while Apache treaties are in effect. Unless the Apache break the treaties first," Chayton said bitterly, "by attacking American settlements with Mexican weapons." The political trap was elegant in its cruelty. Provide weapons to Apache forces, encourage raids that would break existing treaties, then use the violence as justification for military action that would clear the land from mining interests. "But you killed Colonel Martinez," Silas said to the sisters. "Doesn't that stop the weapons shipments?" Ayana shook her head. "Martinez was just a middleman. The real source of the weapons is a businessman in Santa Fe named Harrison Caldwell. He has contracts with both the Mexican government and territorial mining companies. Caldwell supplied the weapons to create the problem," Kiona added. "And he'll supply the territorial militia with weapons to solve it. He profits from both sides of the war." Aando was quiet for a long moment, processing the scope of his people's manipulation. When he looked up, his expression had changed from fury to something more dangerous. Cold, calculated determination. "My warriors are positioned around this ranch," he said slowly. 60 men ready to die for what they believed was honor and tribal survival. What should I tell them now? "The truth," Ayana said simply, "that we're all victims of the same conspiracy." "And then what?" Aando demanded. "My people still need land. The government still wants us gone. The mining companies still want our territory. Knowing about the conspiracy doesn't change those facts." Silas found himself speaking before he'd fully formed the thought. "But it changes how we respond to them." Everyone looked at him. For the first time since this nightmare began, he felt like he might have something valuable to contribute. "If I really am the governor's nephew," he continued, "and if these documents prove what you say they prove, then we have leverage, not just to stop this conspiracy, but to force a real negotiation." "You think your uncle will listen to you?" Chayton asked skeptically. "I think my uncle will listen to evidence that his political career is about to be destroyed by scandal," Silas replied. "Especially if that evidence is delivered by someone who can't be dismissed as a hostile Apache or Mexican agent." Aando was studying him with new interest. "What are you proposing?" "A trade," Silas said. "The documents and my testimony about the conspiracy, in exchange for a new treaty that guarantees Apache land rights and mining revenue sharing." It was audacious. It was probably impossible. But as Silas looked around the barn at faces painted for war, he realized it might be their only chance to avoid the slaughter that someone else had planned for all of them. Aando considered Silas's proposal for what felt like an eternity. Outside, his 60 warriors remained positioned in the tree line, unaware that their entire mission had been based on lies designed to destroy them. The morning sun was climbing higher, and soon other settlers might notice the unusual activity around Silas's ranch. "Your plan has merit," Aando said finally, "but it assumes your uncle values family loyalty over political survival. What if he simply denies the connection and lets you die?" "Then we all die," Silas replied honestly. "But at least we die fighting the real enemy instead of each other." Chayton stepped forward. "Chief, there's something else to consider. When I sent those messages to Chief Nailish, I also sent copies to other contacts, people who might be interested in exposing this conspiracy. Aando's eyes narrowed. What people? Territorial officials who aren't part of Caldwell's network. Chayton explained. I wasn't completely loyal to your war plans, but I also wasn't working for the enemy. I was trying to prevent bloodshed on both sides. Kiona studied the young warrior with new respect. You were gathering evidence. For months, Chayton confirmed. Every weapon shipment, every meeting with Colonel Martinez, every plan to raid settlements, I documented all of it. And yesterday, when Colonel Martinez was found dead, I sent everything to Governor Washington's office in Santa Fe. Silas felt his stomach drop. You contacted my uncle? I contacted the territorial governor, Chayton corrected. I didn't know about your family connection until this morning. But Governor Washington has been receiving anonymous intelligence about the conspiracy for weeks. Ayana was studying the young Apache with new understanding. That's why you revealed Silas's identity. You knew the governor was already investigating. And if the governor is already aware of the conspiracy, Aando said slowly, that he might be willing to negotiate rather than fight. A whistle came from outside, not the sharp signal of Apache warriors, but a different sound entirely. Chayton moved to the barn door and peered through a gap in the wood. Riders approaching, he reported. Not Apache. 3 men well-dressed, riding under a white flag. Silas joined him at the door. In the distance, he could see 3 horsemen approaching slowly, their hands visible and empty of weapons. The lead rider was elderly, gray-haired, wearing the kind of formal clothing that marked him as a government official. Federal marshals? Aando asked. Chayton shook his head. The man in front, I've seen his photograph in territorial offices. That's Governor Washington. Every person in the barn fell silent. Outside, the Apache warriors had noticed the approaching riders and were taking defensive positions. But they weren't attacking. The white flag was being respected. He came himself, Silas whispered, hardly believing it. He came because Chayton's message convinced him this was too important for subordinates, Ayana said, and because he knew that face-to-face negotiation was the only way to prevent the bloodshed that someone else had planned. The riders had reached the ranch yard, dismounting carefully and keeping their hands visible. The elderly man walked toward the barn with the confidence of someone accustomed to dangerous negotiations. Chief Aando, he called out in a clear voice. I am Governor Robert Washington. I believe we have matters of mutual interest to discuss. A pause, and I believe my nephew Silas isn't there with you. I've come to bring him home and to make sure all of you survived this morning. Governor Robert Washington entered the barn slowly, keeping his hands visible and his movements non-threatening. Behind him, 2 federal marshals remained at a respectful distance. Silas could see the family resemblance immediately. The same strong jaw, the same pale blue eyes, even the same way of standing with weight slightly on the left foot. Uncle Bob, Silas said, the childhood name slipping out before he could stop it. Washington's stern expression softened slightly. Hello, Silas. You've grown considerably since your father's last photograph. How did you know I was here? Silas asked. Your monthly reports to territorial headquarters, Washington replied. They've been forwarded to my desk for 3 years. I recognize your writing style, even when you signed your father's name. When Chayton's intelligence reached my office yesterday, connecting Apache political movements to this ranch, I realized my anonymous correspondent was actually my nephew. Aando stepped forward, his hands still near his weapons but not threatening. Governor Washington, we have much to discuss. Indeed we do, Chief Aando, Washington agreed. But first, I need to address the immediate situation. My marshals have arrested Harrison Caldwell and 6 of his associates in Santa Fe. The weapon shipments have been intercepted, and Colonel Martinez's correspondence has been secured. He pulled a document from his coat. This is a federal warrant for Martinez's arrest. We found his body yesterday, along with evidence of conspiracy to manipulate Apache tribes into breaking their treaties. Ayana exchanged glances with her sister. We didn't kill Martinez, she said carefully. We found him dead in his camp and took the documents he was carrying. We thought they might be important. They were critical, Washington confirmed. Those documents proved the link between Caldwell's mining interests and illegal weapon sales. Without that evidence, we couldn't have moved against conspiracy. Chayton spoke up. Governor, what about Chief Aando's people? They've been manipulated into believing war was necessary for survival. Washington nodded. That's why I came personally instead of sending troops. Chief Aando, your warriors haven't actually committed any acts of war yet. This gives us an opportunity to address the underlying issues before violence erupts. What are you proposing? Aando asked cautiously. A new treaty, Washington said, producing another document. One that acknowledges the manipulation your people have endured and provides legitimate economic opportunities, instead of forcing you to choose between starvation and raids. The chief examined the treaty terms carefully. Mineral rights sharing, compensation for past land seizures, guaranteed hunting territories. He looked up. These terms are more generous than anything we've been offered before. Because I need your help, Washington said bluntly. Caldwell's network extends throughout the territory. Other Apache bands, Navajo groups, even some Mexican officials were part of this conspiracy. I need tribal leaders who can help identify and stop similar operations. Kiona stepped forward. What about our sister? Already freed, Washington replied. My marshals removed her from Aando's camp this morning, along with evidence of the weapons cache you were forced to build. Aando's expression showed surprise, then something that might have been relief. She is safe? She is with Chief Nalish, your father, Washington told the sisters. Alive and unharmed. The tension in the barn began to ease. Silas could see the change in everyone's posture as the immediate threat of violence receded. Chief Aando, Ayana said formally, I withdraw my acceptance of your marriage proposal, but I offer my friendship and my commitment to peaceful cooperation between our peoples. Aando nodded slowly. Perhaps friendship between equals is more valuable than marriage built on political necessity. Washington smiled for the first time since entering the barn. Then we have the foundation for a lasting peace. 3 months later, the conspiracy trials in Santa Fe had resulted in prison sentences for Harrison Caldwell and 14 associates. The territorial legislature had passed new laws protecting Apache land rights and establishing fair mining revenue sharing. Silas Ward had accepted a position as Apache Settler Relations Coordinator, with a salary that allowed him to expand his ranch and hire Apache workers who had lost their traditional hunting grounds. His monthly reports to his uncle had become the foundation for territorial policy regarding tribal relations. Ayana and Kiona had established a trading post that connected Apache craftspeople with settler markets, creating prosperity for both communities. Chief Aando had signed the new treaty and returned to his people, where he focused on rebuilding their traditional way of life within the new legal framework. The 60 warriors who had once surrounded Silas's ranch in preparation for war now served as territorial peacekeepers, ensuring that the new treaty was respected by all parties. Sometimes the most important battles are won not with weapons, but with courage to trust former enemies and the wisdom to recognize common ground. If you enjoyed this story, click the video on your screen now to watch another unforgettable tale where courage and justice collide in ways you never expected. Don't forget to subscribe and consider a super chat to help us keep bringing you more stories like these. Your support means everything to us.